Well,
Jim?
No.
there's two dimensions of the fundamentally, this is simplistic, but there's two dimensions to the SEC complaint. One is the timing of the notification, and the second is the content of the notification. And you can take it in either order, but those are essentially the two things. The thing to remember, I was a CISO in 6 large public companies, and every single one of them had a policy that at any time information going to a regulator had to be funneled through the legal department. So the general counsel was essentially accountable and responsible for all filings in any kind of regulatory basis, and any security incident in terms of notifying the regulator, it had to go through legal. It was actually controlled by the general counsel's office in every.
Okay,
and there's
a question though, or clarification on that, because you said something that kind of raised the hair on the back of my neck here. You said it goes through legal and they're responsible. Now, every lawyer, corporate lawyer I've talked to has said, no, we advise, we don't take responsibility. The content is still yours. You're still making the declaration. We will advise you, but we don't own it. Are you saying for the companies you worked for, the attorneys were the responsible parties, or were they simply a pass-through to advise and maybe make recommendations prior to it being released?
What I'm saying is that the corporate policies clearly defined the responsibility for when to offer information to a regulator and to vet that information that goes to a regulator. So the legal departments control the process and were accountable. Now, look,
so they were accountable for the process, not necessarily for the content. So they weren't the ones signing off on the accuracy and legitimacy of the content. They were overseeing the process, getting it from the company to the regulator, correct?
They're also determining when to share information with the regulator, like the notification. Okay. So a CISO independently can't say, I'm going to notify law enforcement, and I'm going to notify a regulator of a particular security incident. That is not in the, that's, at least in my experience, that's not what the CISO is accountable for. The CISO is accountable for bringing that information to the legal organization. And there were very frequent times where I, as a CISO, said, I think we need to tell a regulator, and this is what I think we need to tell them. But that was always vetted and edited by the legal department. The legal department handled the actual notification. My point is that the CISO is the one in both the Joe Sullivan case, Uber case, and the SEC actions against Tim Brown. The CISO is the one that's bearing the accountability for when to notify the regulator and what content of information to provide. And that is inconsistent with corporate policy, where it clearly states that no one in the company, CISO or anybody else, can notify regulators of security incidents without going through the process that's controlled by the legal department. So,
but then that's a policy issue, then, right?
It is a corporate. So what this action
by the company
what this action is enforcing is in a direct contradiction to corporate policies in most major companies.
So then what takes precedent in your mind? Does the federal SEC guidelines take precedent and say, hey, you should craft your policy to be in alignment with it? Or does the policy of independent companies take a precedent and say, oh no, follow the policy, ignore, even if it's in conflict with the SEC federal requirements?
My point is that the SEC action for enforcement against SolarWinds is inconsistent with the majority of corporate policies today in the notification of a regulator and law